Hey peoples, this is Cameo Punk and welcome to an episode of NGGMTV. If you don't know what that stands for or you're just too lazy to go watch another episode, it stands for Nerds, Geeks, Gamings, Movies, Television, and Video Games. Yes, video games has its own separate category. Why? Go check out the popular YouTubers on this internet and tell me how many games they've played in the last 5 years. Answer me that. But today I'm going to be talking about something a little bit not on the popular side because it's a hidden object game and not a lot of people play hidden object games that are really up there. They mainly play popular games like right now, Cuphead and Bendy and the Ink Machine, the recent chapter that just came out and the game that just came out. And some people are kind of a little hyped up on the next Sister Location game coming out. I know I am. I know I didn't finish FNAF 3 with the bang by beating it, but I'm ready. But anyway, if we're going to start with the Dark Parable series, we're going to start at the very first game. The very first game you play in this entire series is Dark Parables, The Curse of Briar Rose, where we go to Scotland as a fairy tale detective in order to stop Rose Vines from consuming a village near the ruined castles where she is sleeping. And in the end, you achieve your goal, but in her hand she gives you something, a little teeny tiny crown, and warns you that the world is about to be flooded because she's getting ready to send you to her brother-in-law. Yep, the Frog Prince. We go all the way to the Black Forest in Germany to find the Frog Prince. More importantly, to save a chancellor's daughter and her bodyguard. And we do, in the end, and it leads to the next game, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And you've seen how it goes. But with each connection, things go a little bit deeper. For example, wife number 4 is actually not on the list to play. It's one of the games that Big Fish Games is the only one that has the game online, and it's just a demo. But this guy, in the lifespan that he's been married to 5 women, all except one have passed away, and he's got a crap ton of in-laws. Brother-in-law, sister-in-laws, mother and father-in-laws. He's got a lot of them. And as far as we know, 1 kid. But the first wife, when we start off, was Briar. Like I said, Briar Rose's brother-in-law was because she has a sister named Ivy. Briar Rose and Ivy. What an interesting combination. But she becomes the first wife of Frog Prince, or as he's referred to as James. And unfortunately, as he stayed young, she grew older and unfortunately died and passed away, and he was returned back into the form of a frog. Next was Agnes Knock, the second Cinderella out of the 5 Cinderellas that there are. He, unfortunately, same thing happened. She marries him, she kisses him, they get married, she passes away, he moves on. Each princess has a different story with him, and as you continue going through up to the very last wife, which was the wife he was still currently married to while they were while they were separated, because he wasn't a frog, he was still human. His last wife was actually Snow White, and unfortunately they had a son, and that's not the unfortunate part. The unfortunate part is he got attacked by mist wolves. And in going on to the 4th game, he was saved by the first Red Riding Hood sister, been given the mirror of truth. She was then possessed by the evil mirror in order to try and save her son. And that's where we run into the Golden Child and Kai and all those kids. But yeah, essentially after that, she blamed her husband for not saving him on time, and they just separated. He even sent a caravan out for her arrest warrant to keep her from going insane, but unfortunately that did not happen. If you remember the 3rd game, because right there is just a little cart with soldiers on it, dead ones. But as you continue on, what's interesting is that Snow White and Ivy are also connected, and so is Agnes Knock, because and Nadia. All of them, they're all connected through certain different reasons, through beings with special powers and special abilities called the goddesses. There are 5 of them mentioned in this game: Flora, Maiden, Moon, Sea, and the Sun Goddess. Believe it or not, they covered the sun and the moon, the ocean, the maiden, and the earth. They've pretty much covered everything. But each one has a different storyline to it. The Maiden Goddess, which you don't really hear about in the final Cinderella, is the reason why we have fairy godmothers. She took pure-hearted witches and attached them to pure-hearted maidens so that way they could find their husbands and live happily ever after. That was her job. The Moon Goddess, I don't know where she is just yet. I forget what game she's going to be in. And I'm pretty sure it's a future one that doesn't currently have two game systems or isn't in a wild tangent yet. So we haven't seen from her yet. The Sun Goddess, we will actually be seeing in the 10th game. 10th game is the Goldilocks and the Fallen Star. So that's where we're going to meet her right now. After that. The next one is the Sea Goddess. She is actually coming up in the next game, which I'll get to later. And then finally, the one that we just recently met with the 7th game, the Flora Goddess. And the Flora Goddess kind of has a pretty big deal, because the only time we ever run into the Maiden Goddess is whenever we're talking about fairy godmothers, and the only mention of fairy godmothers was the final Cinderella and the sort of shrine looking thing that we saw in the very first game with Briar Rose. That's really the only time we've seen anything and not really seen her herself. But the Flora Goddess, she made a pretty big deal about this game, because if you remember me telling you about Snow White and Ivy having a pretty darn good connection, it's because they're guardians. There's 6 Flora Guardians to be exact, and they are not mentioned until number 7. You figured it'd be number 6 for 6 Guardians, but nope. I guess the first one to go to is to go off with Briar Rose and her sister, because they're the first 2 to be mentioned out of the whole series. Their powers are over Rose's and Ivy. I'm just gonna give it to you straight. And unfortunately, she did not give Ivy the power to live on forever, because she dies and her husband turns back into a frog, unfortunately. So, not all of them have the ability to live forever. Briar Rose, however, was given this ability when she was still fast asleep, and she's tried to figure out what to do with her life. And if you go in the upper corner where you see the shrine, if you go to the left, which leads you to a shrine to Briar Rose, you even see a diary entry where she decides to go join the Red Riding Hood sisters until she figures out what to do till her time has come. So that's pretty much what she's decided. Unfortunately, her sister passed away. That's really it. She doesn't have anything else to rely on, except maybe a similar situation with Ross, as he is the brother-in-law of James and Snow White, as a former wife of his, as well as the son that the 2 of them had. But they are not the only Flora Guardians. Next we go to Snow White, because she's 3rd in the series, and her brother, which, seriously, how many of you knew she had a twin brother? But Snow White was given the powers of snow and ice, obviously right there in her name, and her brother, who is a fiery redhead, was given the power of fire. Yeah, apparently when the Flora Goddess gave gifts, she gave them gifts according to the flower types that they were representing, and so on and so forth. But they are guardians of specific types of flowers, not just like different kind of flowers that could represent fire or snow and ice or life and death, which is practically what Briar Rose and Belladonna powers are. But she gave them specific flowers. Specific ones. And like I said, Rapunzel and Belladonna, who are in the 7th game, Rapunzel, of course, has life. Belladonna has death. And unfortunately for Belladonna, her mother, who was the 2nd queen, Rapunzel's stepmother, was tricked by a sorceress named Mother Gothel. Yep, she's not just entangled, she's also in this game too. She tricked her mother. Made her consume a potion that gave her daughter the ability to take life away. That's not great. That's not something you want your kids to have. But the connections don't go just beyond that. If you recall, the 2nd game, or the 6th game, we find out that the main female character in there was a Red Riding Hood sister. If you all remember that. And we got to see and unfortunately we didn't get to see it because, Big Fish Games and Game House like to mess with me and not keeping a full game, But we do get to see the Red Riding Hood sisters at the end of it, if you did go check out the ending. And they actually do have the wolves, believe it or not. At the end of the 4th game, they took the wolves, they trained them to become partners rather than as enemies. And you do get to see the success of that, as well as seeing, the lead sister once again. And like I said, it's not going to be the last time you see these characters. We get to see, if you remember, Gerda is in number 7, believe it or not, where she's essentially just an assistant of Ross. And you get to see Snow White again in the 7th game because she's there to protect Gerda. That's what she's there for, because she feels like she owes Gerda something for saving her son's life when, all hope was lost. He was going to be in a deep sleep forever, and thankfully Gerda saved him, because she is actually the golden child. That's what was plagued out in the third game. And surprisingly enough, we get to see Kai, believe it or not, the little boy that Gerda pushed away and tried to save. He was actually in the very beginning of the 7th one as a botanist. And we do get to see him later on in the series, but probably not in a game that I'll be getting to recently. We do run into the Red Riding Hood sisters, as well as Rapunzel, Pinocchio. We do get to see Jack again from the Sky Kingdom, and we do get to see Ross again, believe it or not. So we get to see a lot of old faces return. Heck, we even get to see Snow White's son. We get to see him all grown up and helping him in the storyline. And that's a future game. I can't remember which one. But it's these connections run pretty darn deep with this game in terms of bringing characters back, reintroducing themselves. I want to know how long it's been, because when we met Gerda in the 7th game, she said it had been 10 years since we last saw her. How old were we when we first met Briar Rose? I ain't got the clue. But this detective has had to be pretty young starting out and growing and keep going, because, seriously, 10 years? And she's almost completely full grown? What the heck? Ugh, kids grow up so fast. And finally, the biggest and most obvious connection throughout this whole series is that every single game has taken place in a country or a part of Europe. And if you don't know what Europe is, then go check out an atlas or a globe and find out where Europe is. Because really, you don't know where that is. But Europe has a lot of connections with its fairy tales. For example, first story, Briar Rose, is held in Scotland. Second story, we go to the Black Forest in Germany to go meet the Frog Prince. We then go a short distance after to Switzerland to find the Snow Queen, head to France to find the Red Riding Hood sisters. We then go to Italy to see Cinderella, and I feel really bad for the final Cinderella because there is not that many connections. The only thing that was there was, the next game, and then we get to see Pinocchio again. That's it. That's really it. We won't be seeing Pinocchio as a wooden boy again. He will be full grown, I think. He'll be a grown man. You can tell, just based on these little icons that I try to put there to relate to each game, how close these kingdoms were. Seriously, the Sky Kingdom in the Netherlands and in Holland, to be more specific, it's kind of up there. We have to go over the North Sea to protect the kingdom, because I doubt we're going to be flying over Belgium and France just to go to the Bay of Biscay or the English Channel. But it just shows how deeply connected these games are, just in terms of how close the kingdoms are, in terms of proximity and closeness. If you're wondering what that next icon down there in that very bottom corner, the Little Mermaid comment corner, that is actually where the next game is going to be taking place. It's going to be taking place in the Greek island of Crete. And it's going to be interesting how they interpret any new characters, any old characters, what the plot line is going to be like, how they incorporate the sea goddess, because she is going to be in that game, and what the roles in these characters, both new and old, what their characters are like. Because the Frog Princess James's third wife was, in fact, a mermaid. She was actually from this very kingdom that we're going to go to in the 7th game. And it's going to be interesting to see what impact he had on her, because we know what impact he had on the 3rd game. We don't know any impact on the 1st game because it was mostly about Briar Rose, not her sister. The 2nd one was a little bit more about her sister. You know, and there's a couple of other games where we get to see his impact on other princesses as well. Because again, the man married 5 different women. Again, he married 5 different women. 3, which we've kind of technically met, which is Snow White, Ivy, and Agnes Nock. In the final Cinderella, we learned a little bit about her. Nadia, which was the mermaid princess, she's coming up next. And then Odette, which was the swan princess, is actually right after number 10, but again, since we're talking about Big Fish Games and Game House, we won't be getting to that soon until, you know, Game House gets it as well, or Wild Tangent gets the whole game, because I really am sick and tired of games cutting me off, like, right at the end of the thing. It drives me nuts. But anyway, that is it for, you know, this episode of NGGMTV, the Dark Parable series. Again, I won't see you again on about Dark Parables until we get to the Little Mermaid and the Purple Tide. If you like this episode, hit that thumbs up button or hit that subscribe button. Either way, I would be very appreciative of it. If you got a suggestion for a game for me to play, put it in the comments section down below. And until the next episode, whatever the heck it is I decide to upload, I will see you guys then. So, goodbye guys!